Right, then the T20 World Cup has started, and like most tournaments, there are a few things that will be very different this time around. What we're going to do in this video is bring you up to speed with this tournament, all that you need to know in terms of some rule additions, what are India's chances, what is going to be their road, qualification from one round to another, and of course the playing conditions. How will that impact the result of this tournament? Those are the things that we're going to focus in the next couple of minutes. Firstly, let's start with the interesting rules. First up, you will see the stop clock rule for the very first time in this tournament. What is that stop clock rule? Well, it is going to be a 60-second timer that will be on as soon as one over is done, and within 60 seconds, the other team or the bowling team has to start the next over. If they exceed that 60 seconds, then there's going to be a penalty. The batting team will be awarded 5 runs immediately if you cannot start the next over within 60 seconds. This is to ensure that games don't go past 3 hours, 3.5 hours, sometimes 4 hours. That tends to happen in a T20 game. It's much like the time clock that you see in tennis between serves. So if you miss out on that time clock, then there is a fault that the chair umpire gives. That is something that is going to be introduced in this tournament and that you are going to be seeing for the very first time. The other interesting rule that you will notice this time, as you know, in a T20 match, to make it an official match, if you have 5 overs aside, that is counted as an official match. You can use Duckworth-Lewis as well in that scenario. However, this time around in the knockouts, that is the semi-finals and of course the finals, 5 overs will not suffice. You need to have a minimum of 10 overs to make it an official game. These are the 2 new interesting rules that you will see in this tournament. Okay, let's now turn our attention into qualification, because there's a lot of misinformation about that on mainstream as well as social media. So let me clear all your doubts. Firstly, whether it's the first group or whether it's the super stage, 2 group stages that you have this time, you will move in based on points. So the top 2 teams move from first round to Super 8s. Similarly, top 2 teams from Super 8s move into the semi-finals. So how are you going to be doing it? Firstly, of course, points. In terms of points, if you're top 2, you move in. After that, as you see in the IPL, you see the net run rate. Now that is not going to be there this time around. This time, you are going to be seeing the total number of wins, that's second. So if your net run rate is low, but you've registered more wins than the other team, in terms of if you're tied on the same points, then the team with more wins goes through. Third criteria will be net run rate. If the points are the same, wins are the same, then you look at the net run rate. That will be the third criteria. So that's something that's going to be different in this tournament. And the other thing, a lot of people are suggesting that once you move from the first group to the Super 8s, you will carry forward the points from the first group stage into Super 8s. That, I'm afraid, is incorrect news. You're not carrying forward any points. Once you move from first round into the Super 8s, you start Super 8s with 0 points in front of your name. Doesn't matter whether you finish top of the points table or second in the points table. So that is something to keep an eye out for when you're looking at qualification. Let's now take a look at India's chances, and that's very interesting. You assume India and Pakistan to be the top 2 teams in the first stage, so they move into Super 8s. In Super 8s, India, Pakistan will be in different group, and if all teams based on the seedings qualify for Super 8s, then most likely India are going to be playing New Zealand in the first game in Barbados, Sri Lanka in the next game that they're going to be playing, that will be in Antigua, and then the third game India will play will be against Australia, and that will be played in St. Lucia. So these will be India's Super 8 matches, provided all teams based on their seedings make it into the next round. Doesn't matter whether India finishes first in their group 1 or second in their group 1, wherever they finish, they are A1. So these are the teams that they will play, provided Sri Lanka, New Zealand, Australia also qualify. Doesn't matter where they finish, first or second in their points table. Basis this, can India go into the semi-final? Now let's take a look at each of India's match. First one against New Zealand, it's in Barbados. Barbados isn't a very high scoring ground. That means it's not a 200 ground, but it's not a low scoring ground. That means it's not even a 150 ground. It's a 170, 75, 80 sort of a ground, which tends to, it helps spinners, but overall, if you look at the scenario, then it tends to favor teams that are suited for that. And as things stand right now, I think both New Zealand and India are suitably matched for this game with these conditions or offer in Barbados. So very tough to call, maybe 50-50 in this particular game. India next plays Sri Lanka, and that game is in Antigua, and that is a game that tends to help spin bowlers. Low scoring encounters you tend to see, and Sri Lanka in a spin friendly venue is not great news. Again, not the ideal venue. India would have wanted to play Sri Lanka, but that's how the draw is. India plays Sri Lanka in that next encounter. Thirdly, India play Australia in one of the most high scoring venues of them all, St. Lucia, which regularly gets 190, maybe even 200 runs have been chased there. So this is the high scoring ground that you're playing Australia. Again, not an ideal ground. Ideally, if India would have wanted, they would have wanted to play, let's say, Australia in Antigua and Sri Lanka in St. Lucia. It would have worked out very fine. But that's now how the schedule has been made. So if India do make it into the Super 8s, they're going to have a tough time. They'll need to win at least 2 out of the 3 games to qualify into the semi-final. How the results go will depend on a few factors. One is dew. Many of you are going to be talking about dew. Dew will play a role in West Indies. Certain grounds tend to have dew, certain don't. This time of the year, you do get dew as well in the West Indies, but it is going to be pretty much like India, where certain times, in the ground, there will be dew, certain time dew doesn't turn up. So it will be luck of the draw. If dew does come, chasing is going to be good. However, remember, India are playing most of their games in the daytime. The first time they'll play a day and nighter will be when they play a knockout in semi-final. So till this time, India playing their games during the day. So toss is not going to be very essential. Day games, maybe low scoring games, which may help Indian spinners as well as Indian batters. So kind of works out in India's favor. So if you ask me, I think based on this, they should make it to the semi-final. As far as pitches are concerned, you will get variety of pitches. There are high scoring grounds, like St. Lucia, as I mentioned. Decently high scoring is Barbados. Low scoring grounds like Antigua, very low scoring ground like Guyana, where sometimes even 130 can be defended. You will get different types of grounds. So basis those grounds, you will have to pick your team and also look around your strategy. But I have a feeling that you may not get typical West Indian pitches. You might get pitches that will be better for batting, good for batting. One, because it is an ICC tournament. ICC does give enough time for curators to prepare good batting friendly true pitches, because it attracts more eyeballs. It keeps a rhythm of the tournament going. With this in mind, you know that you will have good pitches, better than what you get in bilateral series. So may not be very spin friendly pitches as you're expecting. Good batting track is what you might get. Secondly, must always look at the home team and the kind of squad that they've picked. West Indies have picked a very explosive squad. They've picked players that bat till lower down the order, which gives you an indication that you might get batting friendly pitches, that you might be seeing that kind of aggressive approach that we've started seeing in T20 cricket all across the globe, here as well in the T20 World Cup. That is how I can sum up the T20 World Cup, or at least my prediction as to how this tournament is going to pan out. If you enjoyed this video, do give us a like, and for more such informative videos, don't forget to subscribe to Sports Today. For the moment, Nikhil Nas signing off.